Hi guys, it's George. Now, once again, this video is very late. In fact, it's almost a week late, for which I can only apologise for. As usual, I'm trying to keep up with them, but they're very difficult to keep up with, actually. So once again, when I get to the bit about Big Brother, I'll be talking about Big Bro Week 6, just as Big Bro Week 7 is just about to end. So you may well be watching it with dramatic irony, but I can't help that. I can only do my best. Now, before I continue, I'll just point out that I do actually have a bit of a cold at the moment, so sorry if my voice doesn't sound quite right, but I'll just have to try my hardest. Now, I think I might have mentioned in the past that I was going to make a video about this, but this week I'm going to talk about Dale Farm, which has been in the news quite a lot recently. If anyone doesn't know, I'll just basically recap on it. Basically, over the last 20 years or so, there's this estate in Essex called Dale Farm, where there have been travellers living there, and half of the estate they actually own, and half of it they don't. And after a 10-year legal battle, Basildon Council and the government has finally decided to evict them, and that's what's been happening. Well, obviously they haven't evicted all of them, because some of it they actually own themselves, but they've evicted quite a significant number. And I've been doing quite a lot of research on this over the last few weeks. Sorry. I'm doing quite a lot of research on this over the last few weeks, partly because I've been involved in making a play about this. I'm devising a play about it with some college friends. But this morning I watched a panorama programme about it, which really brought some of the things together. If you'd like to watch it, it's actually available on iPlayer for a year, I checked. It's on until next October. So if you want to watch it, you've got plenty of time. Now, if you've read my previous blogs and watched my previous video blogs, you will know that I'm quite obviously on the side of the travellers, because one of my biggest values is that I think that people are always ultimately the most important thing. Whatever other issues that you're considering, you always need to consider the welfare of the people as your number one priority, and I don't think that the council has done that. In fact, they seem to have been not doing that quite a lot recently, but that's neither here nor there. But in this case, they certainly haven't really considered the actual people there. For example, when you see video clips of the council meetings, you don't actually see any of the farm inhabitants there discussing it, which I think is a real shame, because I don't actually think the travellers were causing very much trouble, but if they were, then they could probably sort it out by negotiation rather than forcibly evicting them, so I think it's a bit unfair. Anyway, on the panorama programme, there are a lot of interviews with the people who were living on Dale Farm. There are still some people there at the moment, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure there are still some people there. And when you look at them and when you hear them talking, it really makes you feel for them. It really does. Well, it probably doesn't make what's his name, Len Gridley, who's their rather unpleasant neighbour. It probably doesn't make him feel for them, but most other people, I think it makes feel for them. There's a woman called Mamie Slattery. She, in particular, was very, very influential in talking to the cameras and that kind of thing. And one thing that really, really impressed me about her was she quite often addressed the interviewer as Richard. She actually took the time to get to know his name, and a lot of people don't do that. I think that when David Cameron and Basildon Council talk about them, they probably haven't actually bothered to learn the people's names. Which, again, I think is a shame, because it loses a personal aspect, and I think with this kind of thing, you need to think about things in a personal way, because if you don't, then obviously it might, on one hand, if you don't think about it personally, it might make it a bit more, might make you a bit more objective, but also it makes you a bit more ruthless. Like, they probably even refer to the people as units as opposed to people. I remember they did that in an episode of Torchwood once. The government referred to people as units to stop them from thinking about them as people. Now, this play that I'm working on, it's actually quite comedic. there are some scenes in it which I think are intended to make the audience laugh, which is obviously a good thing in a play. But I think most of the viewers here probably won't really understand this, but I think that the way in which we've devised some of the scenes isn't really very respectful. And I kind of feel a bit distasteful about the idea of doing this. Now, I only really thought about this morning, because I haven't actually talked to my colleagues about this yet, so it's probably a bit rich to first mention it on a public YouTube video, but that's the way I feel, so I'm sure we'll talk about that soon. But anyway, I didn't want this just to be me sitting here talking about how I feel about Dale Farm, because I did also want to talk personally to any of the bailiffs or the riot police if they're watching this, because I think quite a lot of them did get quite aggressive. There was one point where they were actually breaking down a wall on a private part of their land they did actually own. So maybe they should have made a bit more of an effort to know what they were allowed on and what they shouldn't have done. But again, that's neither here nor there. But I do think that a lot of these people, bailiffs and riot police, a lot of the time they're only doing it because it's their job. So I just want to say, if you're in a job which is telling you to do something that you think is wrong, stand up for yourself and stand up for what you believe in, because I think that's really important. So if you're being told to do something which you think is unfair or something, like go off sick or something, get a few more people to do that. I think that's really, really important. And also, if there are any bailiffs or riot police watching this, whether they're involved in this incident or with something else, one thing I'd really, really urge you is, if you're part of a riot or some kind of scene like this, never ever raise your voice. Raising your voice incites violence and it incites aggression. And I think that is a really, really bad approach, and all it does is cause disharmony. So anyway, if one person has learnt anything from this video, I think that's worth it. Now, before I go on to Big Brother, there is actually something I was going to say. I was having a conversation with some of my friends recently, Sammy, Sean and Robbie. They're actually the friends I'm making this video with. But when we were devising our play quite recently, we got onto a discussion about someone that they know. I don't know this person, but on someone that they know called Hugo. And in this discussion, there was something that I was going to say, which I wasn't able to say because I was silenced by Ross. So I thought YouTube would be a great place to say this, because then other people can get involved and they can give their own opinions on this. So before I say what I was going to say, I'll just give you a bit of the background to the discussion. Basically, Hugo is someone who was involved in the Stokes Croft riots, but he wasn't actually one of the people who was being violent. But anyway, a riot police officer there, I'm not completely sure of my facts here, but apparently Hugo tripped over a bin or something, and when he was getting up, a riot police officer struck him on the head and also didn't give his number, his police identification, which the police are actually required to do. And I was pointing out to my friends that they are actually required to do this, and they said, well, they weren't, and I was saying, well, there should have been a complaint, and like we kept on talking like this, and eventually I was silenced. But what I was going to say was, if you want to make a complaint about a police officer for assaulting you, then you can do that if you know their riot number. If they didn't give you their riot number, then you can make a complaint about them for two things. You can make a complaint about them for not giving you the right number and for assaulting you. And if they didn't give you their right number, then you can identify them, because obviously it'd be difficult to identify them if they didn't give you the right number, so it'd be difficult to make a complaint about them in the first place. But you can identify them. If you just take a look at them, then you can just say who they were. Even if they were covering their faces, I think if you make a public request for the person to come forward, I think that most people would. Maybe that's just me being naive, but I genuinely think that if someone working in a job like that has done something wrong, then they will come forward if you ask them to. Anyway, going on to a lighter note, or is it? Going on to a lighter note, I'm going to start talking about Big Brother now. Again, this is at the end of week 6, and this is the order on which I like the housemates. In 8th place is Jay. I do quite like Jay, I've always quite liked Jay, but there aren't that many people left, and out of everyone who's left in the house, I think he's probably the one I like the least. He'll probably get through to the final, but he's probably the one I like the least. In 7th place is Aaron. Now, again, Aaron's someone I quite like, but due to some of the things that Anton said in his interview, and also some of the things that Jem has said, makes me think that there's maybe something a bit more negative about him that maybe I haven't seen, so I'm starting to get a bit suspicious of him now. I mean, there was that time when he was playing Faye and Tom and goodness knows who else in the house, but I've kind of quite liked him since then, but I'm not sure because I've heard these people saying things, so maybe there's something I haven't seen. In 6th place is Louise, who for quite a long time was the kind of person who was a bit of a non-identity, but now I quite like her, particularly since when it seemed like Aaron and Jay had been evicted, she was really, really upset, and it made me think, wow, she actually does have something about her. 5th place is Harry. Again, he's kind of gone up in my books the last few weeks. He's still not one of my favourites in the house, but I mean, he's too posh for one thing, but you can't help that. I mean, he seems like a nice person, just not quite as great as some of the others. In 4th place is Jem. I really like her. She's got a few strange things about her, but I like the way she really tries to look out for her sister, who's Faye. So, yeah, I think Jem's quite a cool character. In 3rd place is Faye. Again, I still really like her. I'm very loyal to her, mainly because I've been loyal to her from the start. She's been a bit whiny recently, but I'm still feeling quite loyal to her. 2nd place is Alex. I think she's going to win. Apparently she's like the bookie's favourite to win or something, and if she wins I'd be very, very pleased because I think she's just amazing. And in 1st place, it's probably the furthest person away from who I think will win, but in 1st place is Tom. I really like him to win, because he's the only person in the house who's really, really objective, and I just love that. Like, he's such a cool character. I don't think he's going to win, but if he did win, I would love it. Maybe it's just because I look like him because of the hair, but I think if I was in the house, I would be Tom. Now, sorry for going through the Big Brother thing so incredibly quickly, but I'm only allowed a 15-minute video on YouTube, and it's getting kind of towards the end, so I was really scared of running out of time, so I had to go really quickly. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. It would be great if anyone had learned anything from it, and hopefully, I'll be able to make another video soon. So, ta-ta!